What a story in the L.A. Times. Of course, if you've been listening to the John and Ken Show for the past several weeks, you already know this. Here's the first paragraph. A series of concessions over the last year to quiet opposition to the California bullet train has created a potentially lethal problem. The revised blueprint for the system could violate requirements locked into state law when voters approved funding for the project in 2008. First thing that stands out there is something that John mentioned earlier. To quiet critics. Well, we're like the biggest critics, and nobody's come to us to quiet us. And if they did, we would have said, just pull the plug on this thing.
Wait, this is what's amazing. This is what makes me crazy about journalism. It's not about critics. It's not about what one side says and the other side says. It's about the truth. And the truth is they have no money for this. They lied on how much it was going to cost. They lied on the ridership. They used faulty L.A. Times-style polling methods to come up with customer support for this idea. They lied, and in the end, it's untenable. There's no possible money for this. If it was built, it would never make money. It would be a massive tax-sucking boondoggle for the rest of eternity. Those are facts. It's not speculation. It's truth. So when you if this was a business, the guy who was going to run the business would say, no, I'm going to go bankrupt if I do this idea.
Well, the Times found a few things that we did know and a few things that we didn't know. They point out that the mandates in the proposition are clear. They require that any initial segment has to use high-speed trains. Money for each operating segment needs to be in hand before construction starts. Passengers must be able to board in Los Angeles and arrive in San Francisco without changing trains, and as many as 12 trains per hour are supposed to run in each direction. The system has to operate without taxpayer subsidies. Instead, the rail authorities agreed to run fewer trains at slower speeds on track shared with commuter rail systems. That's something we told you about last week. So that's their latest trick.
It's not going to be high-speed rail. They're going to be running on slow-speed rail from Los Angeles until they get to Palmdale or Bakersfield, and then you're going to have to switch trains before you go on to San Francisco. So it's not going to be a nonstop bullet train from L.A. to San Francisco in 2+ hours. It's you're getting off the slow train, you're changing trains, and you're getting on the fast train. Well, that's not what the proposition said that authorized them to borrow the money.
If you were listening to the show a week or so ago, we told you the word of the day is blended. That's the jargon that they use at the High Speed Rail Authority. Even Jerry Brown's picked up on it to tell you that they're going to share the tracks with commuter rail systems, Amtrak, freight trains. And John's right. In the early years, you'll probably have to transfer trains to get from one end of the system to the other. That's what they call the blended approach, which is in direct violation of the proposition. This should not even get this out of square one.
In fact, the former chief executive of this boondoggle, Roloff Van Ark, asked for a legal analysis by the Attorney General. In a confidential letter dated September 9th, Van Ark asked whether the blended system would comply with the criteria prescribed by Proposition 1A. Now, the Attorney General has declined to say whether there's been an opinion, saying it's attorney-client privilege. What do you mean attorney-client privilege? We're paying for the Attorney General, and we're paying for this high-speed rail board.
Jerry Brown's
so if the Attorney General has given high-speed rail a legal opinion on whether what they're doing is legal or illegal, we should know. Jeez, we're the client here, not Roloff Van Ark.
The Attorney General is another Democrat-connected Jerry Brown. That's that lady from San Francisco that used to be the attorney up there.
Here's another thing. Here's another way they're going to violate the law. The blended approach may reduce the number of trains to as few as 2 per hour at peak times.
The law calls for up to 12.
And Mehdi Morshed, former chief executive of the rail project, said, why would we spend billions of dollars to get 2 trains per hour? We were telling people the system would have essentially unlimited capacity. If you don't have frequent service, you're not going to have a profitable system.
You know what Jerry Brown said about the fact that this blended approach could be a violation of the proposition? Well, we're aware of the issue, and people want to micromanage everything. In other words, forget. You're looking at the fine details. No, you're not.
No, this is what was in the law.
And by the way,
this is actual law that we voted on.
This is what the critics Remember I mentioned when we started this story that they did some of this changes to the plan due to the critics. Well, some of the NIMBYs, the locals, didn't like the idea of high-speed trains running through their neighborhoods on 60-foot-high viaducts. So that's why they came up with the idea of, oh, well, we'll use the regular rail system and the Amtrak and what you've already got there. So don't worry about that. But that's a violation of the proposition.
Yeah.
Remember, the trains are supposed to run from L.A. to San Francisco. You're not supposed to change trains. Supposed to take like 2 hours and something minutes. This is absolutely, and to use a bad cliche, way off the track from what people voted for.
And this idea that they're trying to address critics, that's like saying a guy robs a bank. The police show up and arrest him. The police are now identified as critics. The police are there to catch a bad guy. We're not critics. We caught these guys. They're scam artists. This High Speed Rail Commission, Jerry Brown, the legislative leaders that are backing this thing, they're a bunch of crooks. We caught them. We caught them robbing the bank.
Here's another scam.
These aren't criticisms. We got truth here.
Here's another scam they pulled. There's a suit, and we mentioned this lawsuit. I think we even had somebody on from Kings County that alleges that the plan to start construction in the Central Valley is illegal because it's not going to be electrified. Remember we told you that? It's the famous train to nowhere, Bakersfield to Chowchilla. It's not going to be an electric rail segment. Well, apparently the way they got around this, they created a new vocabulary and determined that the track is simply an initial construction segment. The actual proposition calls for the operating segments to be electrified. But they're just going to call this an initial construction section? I mean, they got to be kidding me.
Right. They have to be electrified in order to get the money to build them. They're not going to be electrified, so now they're not calling them operational track anymore.
No, just an initial construction section.
So they're changing the name of the construction because it would violate the law.
And remember,
but changing the name of something doesn't put you in compliance with the law.
This also worked in reverse. I don't want to get too complicated here, but the federal government said in order to get money from us, we want you to start that system in the Central Valley. They want the Bakersfield to Chowchilla line because there's been a lot of pressure from Congress people up there that there's no jobs, right? So they decided that they will start construction there, but because everybody down here is yelling, a lot of people in California who favor high-speed rail, we don't. You got to build it where there's people. Southern California, Bay Area, that's where there's people. So what they're going to do is they're going to operate that one first. But the initial construction is going to start in the Central Valley. But when this whole thing is finally running, the first operating segment, and that's where they are going to use the local rail lines, could be in the Bay Area or Southern California. God, they really have twisted this thing.
Oh, this is.
Most people.
This is a disaster. This is a complete disaster.
Who voted for this
to the
proposition.
point you can't even follow it anymore.
Exactly right. Most people voted for this proposition thought, all right, you're going to build a rail line. It's going to go from San Francisco through Sacramento down to L.A., through Orange County down to San Diego. It's going to be a brand new, wonderful, high-speed rail, 200 miles per hour. That's probably what people thought for. Instead, we're getting this convoluted, blended approach where parts of the lines will be track that's already there. Parts won't be electric. You'll end up on an Amtrak train. You'll end up, I don't know. Here, you have to get on this freight train, by the way. Don't worry, high speed.
They're using freight train tracks, too.
Yeah, exactly right. Because
you might have to sit in a cargo bin to Palmdale.
This has to be stopped. And it has to be stopped by the courts because I think the legislature is going to go along with this.
You know what these guys are doing, those? You notice these guys? They don't care what the law is. Every revision they've come up with to appease the critics is a violation of the law. It's a violation of Proposition 1A. And then you tell that to Brown, he goes, stop micromanaging things. Like, I'm sorry, that's the law. You want to borrow tax money. Oh, another thing here that's illegal? This thing can never use taxpayer subsidies. It has to break even year one. There's no taxpayer subsidies to fill the deficit that this is obviously going to run up. If they use tax money, violates the law. They're stuck there, too. But I guess that's just a detail, right? Taxpayer money used as subsidies. We're just micromanaging things here from the critics' desk.
So sometime later this week, they're supposed to put out another new business plan with this blended approach, and this is how they claim they're going to save money, because we're going to use track that's already there. It's not what's in the proposition.
No, because it's slow speed track.
All right, when we come back, when we talked about the high-speed rail Browndoggle, we'd get emails from people, why not a high-speed rail train to Las Vegas? Well, actually, there is one in the planning, but you have to get to Victorville to get on it. Did you just laugh at it? It's true. You'd have to drive to Victorville, leave your car there, then get on the high-speed rail to Vegas. We'll tell you. And there's a U.S. senator behind this one with his cronies. We'll explain.
John and Ken Show. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk radio.